to An Artist, the web series where I get to interview wonderful artists who have participated in art cultivation and art distillery. My name is Macy Liptoy. I'm the pastor of 723. And today I get to interview Jeffrey Colangelo. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you've been a part of art cultivation and participating in what Art Distillery's been doing at Summit 23, and you started Prism Movement Theater. Is that correct?
Yes, although with that name, a lot of people do ask, like, where did you get the prisoners? How do you do that?
I know, Prism.
Yes, Prism, rather than.
Yes.
But yeah, sorry, can you say that question again?
Well, so I was going to ask, just for those of you who haven't got a chance to really see what you guys do at Art Cultivation, why don't you take us a little bit of time and tell us about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm one of the people who helped kind of make the idea of art cultivation come into being with Lucila and Ilkner and Michael and all of the really, truly amazing people there, Raf, Sergio. I mean, yeah, we're the guys who kind of put the first idea together. I remember sitting in a room with Ilkner and Raf and Karencita and Lucila, and and Ilkner just had this kind of crazy idea for a show, and yeah, we just kind of formulated this whole idea. So yeah, so since then, I've been one of the directors for the shows for pretty much, we were very close to a year. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you really like art. So art cultivation was really kind of like started from the beginning with you guys, this small group of folks, and now it's kind of exploded into this huge thing that, hopefully can come back soon. I miss it.
Oh my gosh, I miss it too.
I know.
Yeah, and it was really a super exciting idea because I think the idea of taking a variety show format but really trying to make it very community minded and trying to mix really really like top tier professional talent alongside some more undiscovered talent as well, and trying to make this feeling that all of these artists are the most exciting people you could possibly see and talk about. I think is what I think really sets Art Cult apart from a lot of other variety shows is that its attitude is in service of our performers, and its attitude is so much about trying to elevate everybody, no matter who comes into the door, elevate them to a place where they really are something spectacular.
That's so cool. I love that. So, you've been involved in productions and performance, and obviously this is not your first rodeo when it comes to theater. So how did you get started in kind of the performing arts and theater? Was there a moment where you fell in love with live performance and thought, oh, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I come from a family of performers. My mom and dad were actors and writers and so on. So I was kind of I was kind of born into it. And oddly enough, when I was younger, I hated the idea of doing acting or theater or anything else like that. I thought it was really like annoying that I had to go to all these auditions, and I wanted to be a scientist. The vague idea of scientist, but yeah, it was really only until I hit middle school with my teacher Lisa Cameron that she kind of hooked me on the bug, and I was trapped ever since. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like how I got here, it's been kind of a wild ride. I wanted to start as an actor, and then eventually I just didn't like I didn't like a lot of the conditions that actors are kind of put under. So I ended up wanting to be a fight choreographer and direct and all these other things. And then I got really super into movement. I think especially my teacher, Bill Langfelder, helped me a lot, and Sarah Romesberger as well when I went to college. And they kind of helped inspire what I eventually ended up kind of doing, which was creating a movement theater company and working with the circus and doing all the crazy stuff that I ended up doing.
So Prism Movement Theater has done a bunch of really incredible stuff, like sword fighting ballet and just really brilliant things that we've seen at our Cultivation. And this is kind of your creation, and started from this idea of doing movement theater company. So what's been the most challenging thing about creating performances for Prism Movement Theater?
I think Prism is a very unique beast because, once again, we don't really use words. Yeah, sometimes we cheat, sometimes it's always in service of the story ultimately, but it is really definitely about trying to take narrative and dialogue and parsing it down to its most core form of how can we understand the story without dialogue? Do we need words for this at all? And if we do decide, okay, we need some kind of word or something to get this more existential point across, great, we do that. But I think by doing that, by getting a story down to just its wordless form, what we're able to do is create theater that is extremely accessible. We're able to make a theatrical experience that deaf people are able to understand and enjoy, that people who don't speak the language can understand and enjoy, that people of any age group can kind of understand too, because body language is a very kind of primal language. It's very easy to understand in a lot of cases. So yeah, the challenge has always been like, how do we boil these stories down? How do we make this simple? With movement language as well, or gestural language, the idea of an idea, or the idea of like a existential idea, or the future, or even the past, can be very difficult to convey on stage because gestural language really has to do with the present and the now. So we have to be very careful in crafting the stories in a way that we aren't trying to present ideas that are too esoteric, that right, even something as simple as like the idea of patriotism maybe can be like solved by a salute or this, but that may not read for somebody who comes from not America. And so we have to think about that ultimately as we're devising and developing. And then the last kind of crazy trap about Prism is that people can get, when you're making the stuff, you can get trapped in creating your own microcosm language that only you and the actors understand, but you don't realize that you made a language that nobody else can understand. And so a lot of kind of peer reviewing is really necessary as well, that we make sure that we are making this thing and then showing it to other people and going, does this make sense? Does this story read still? So yeah, it comes with a lot of difficulties, but I think the benefits are great. I mean, after working with Prism for so long, I know how to make a narrative structure like nobody's business. I have to, because if your narrative structure doesn't work, you don't have dialogue to hide it.
Yeah.
You don't have like, oh, excellent dialogue. I barely even noticed that didn't make any sense. So yeah, it's a very unique beast, but it's honestly been really fun, lovely work to do. And I think right now Prism's finally getting into that phase where the people that we're bringing on are also understanding the core tenets of this language. Kwame and Zoe and Jonah are really starting to understand it. And I think we're hopefully starting to get other people to kind of understand what's going on and how to effectively make this type of work. And it's a very exciting kind of new place to be.
That's so cool. Like, when you're talking about body language and the importance of driving a narrative through physicality, I remember as a young kid learning Shakespeare and like not understanding half of what Shakespeare was saying, but then seeing Shakespeare for the first time on stage.
Yeah.
And being like, oh, now I get Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And just the importance of that. So
I think people discount how physical of an act speaking is. Mm-hmm. And reading something on the page is not nearly the same as speaking something out loud. And man, Shakespeare is a really physical speaking text. It uses so much alliteration and different things with your mouth that when you say it right, it literally contorts your face into the emotions that you need to express. Good writing.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why it stood the test of time for, hundreds
Right.
of years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's been the most kind of, the challenge of creating narrative without words, but what's been the most rewarding? Is there a story or a moment where you think back to a moment with Prism Movement where you thought, oh my gosh, this is incredible, and I want to remember this, and I want to live in this for the rest of my life, like this rewarding moment?
Yeah, man. I mean, there's been a lot of them, honestly. I think there's just been a lot of moments I've been really proud to see happen on stage. I mean, we even in shows that like I don't, I personally wouldn't believe they were successful throughout in terms of conveying its narrative.
Mm-hmm.
The narrative still got us to places where crazy things would happen on stage that you just never get to see. And the shows I'm going to list, I have no judgment either way. I just think they managed to accomplish unique things. Like Galatea, we made a paper circus and made a paper snowfall fall, and it was gorgeous. Or in Prism, we did a Jackson Pollock paint war, and that was crazy. It was so much fun to see fighters dip themselves in paint and fight, and the painting they would leave a painting by the end of it. Teotl, we had with Karamiya, we had 20 tons of sand, and it would rain sand partway through the show. But in terms of like actual like full on, straight up narrative success, I would say like Bruises, where we had two female MMA fighters tell their kind of story in the ring, was really excellent and kind of groundbreaking, I think, because it was just such an excellent blend of spectacle and narrative that so clearly got its point across, and it was gorgeous to watch. It was one of my absolute favorite shows that we ended up doing. Yeah, I think in some way, for the most part, every single Prism show that we've done, I think there's always a moment or a something that is take home worthy and just like, wow, I've never seen that on stage, or I've never, or wow, honestly, this story would have been impossible to tell with words. That doing it wordlessly gave it such a deeper meaning and such a deeper experience. Yeah, there's just been a lot. I think there's a lot to be very proud of and happy with.
That's awesome. So I know you kind of mentioned some of your favorite shows. Is there an absolute like dead on favorite performance? And this could be with Prism or with another theater company that you think like, this is by far my favorite experience in live theater.
Yeah. I think like I'm biased towards a lot of the Prism shows. I'm not going to bother listing them, listing the ones that I would like. I think each one is a precious little baby. But in terms of outside of Prism, I think the shows that stick with me to this day, I saw a production of The Flick at Undermain, and that was just absolutely gorgeous. And it also means a lot to me too, because one of my friends, Jared Wilson, who unfortunately passed, was in it, and he probably gave one of the best performances I've ever seen, and it honestly had me sobbing in the car. And it was just gorgeous. And then, oh no, unfortunately, the name of the show is escaping me, and that's really sad. But it was a production that was done at Theater 3, and it had the folks from the drama club, and it was a musical. It's so annoying because one of my board members was in it, and she was excellent. No. I can't remember the name. But it was a really excellent musical. It was so good. On the Eve. There we go. On the Eve. That was gorgeous. Its set design was incredible for it. It was a really fun musical. But one of my favorite parts of that musical was that Miriam, I remember specifically, I was watching it, and there was a part in the show where the performers would go up to you and they'd give you a note. And it was just a beautiful, sweet little note, like, you are valued, or like, I see you, or whatever it is. And it was just it was done so earnestly that it was just such a wonderful take home. Like I took home that note, and I got to take home the show in that way. It was really excellently done. I think, and then Artillery's Generations of Adam is another one that sticks with me too. Technically, I was in it and experiencing it at the same time, but I really, really enjoyed that one. I thought they did such a good work, and I think immersive theater has a hard time sometimes being immersive, quote unquote, where it's like, let's sit down at a dinner table and watch a show, and that's not really immersive. It's dinner theater, which is great. I love dinner theater. But a true immersive, I think Artillery is one of the few companies that actually has a handle on how to do it right and do it in a way that is genuinely immersive theater. It's just so technically proficient. Anyways, yeah.
Must say, Generations was my first experience with immersive theater, and just the way that you knew that there were stories happening all around, but you still were guided through a narrative. Because I was really I was confused, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to know what's going on. And then I saw it, and I was like, oh, I know exactly what's happening.
And that's what was so impressive about Generations of Adam, is that a lot of other immersive theaters, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to try to put this puzzle together, and I hope I get something out of it. It feels like a lot of times in other immersive experiences, somebody just takes the whole puzzle box and they just kind of dump it on the floor and they're like, figure it out, deal with it. But somehow with Artillery, it still had the fun of exploration, but the narrative was still so clear that you still knew what was being ultimately said.
Exactly.
That being said, too, I also thought the previous production, Dirty Turk, had one of my favorite moments where the grandparents died, spoilers, and Saffron and Katie Chan were the grandparents, and they took off their giant puppets to actually die, and that was great too. I really enjoyed both of those productions. Sorry, my phone is blowing up. Anyways,
that's it's just an incredible experience to have and be able to be part of Artillery, what they're doing. So in creating and being part of something that's almost brand new, you've created Prism, you've helped create Art Cult, you've been part of just new things all around. What inspires you to create? I know this is a weird time where we're all kind of short on inspiration or feel kind of inspirationally dry. So is there a consistent well you go to feel inspired?
I think I keep telling myself, what would I want to see, or what have I never seen before? And most specifically, combining those two. What have I never seen before that I would want to see?
Yeah.
And I think when I keep asking myself that, and I go to, I know it sounds shallow, but if I go to the core idea of like, I've never seen this crazy thing happen before. Let's build a narrative around that. It's kind of backwards. A lot of people are like, I want to tell a story. But I think when I do that, I get inspired to make it come into being, to make this crazy idea actually happen. Like just the idea of the sword ballet. It started with like, okay, I feel like I've seen ballet dancers dance with swords, and I've seen sword fighters fight in a way that might be a little flamboyant, but I've never seen dancers genuinely fight with swords and live in a new language. And so like I got people together and try to figure out a new language with that. And honestly, I think it's so cool. I think it's one of my favorite things I've gotten to create is this. It's getting to blend these two worlds that I really love. So yeah.
That's awesome. I like that. I like the idea of starting with whatever like you're interested in, because I think a lot of people when they create, they try to force themselves to do what someone else does and how someone else creates.
I think oddly enough, narrative and story can be oddly constricting in a lot of ways, because narrative has to still especially Western narrative, has to still kind of follow these beats that happen. Beginning, rising action, climax, falling action, conclusion, and you have to fit those. And so when you're doing that, you get stuck in making a good story, but you don't get to make the cool, crazy stuff that like makes it really pop or makes your climax even more of a climax. I agree with you totally.
Yeah. So speaking of kind of narrative and story and, finding new ways to tell story, if you could recommend a book or a film, because I know some people hate to read, so I want to make it accessible for everybody, for everyone to read or watch during the stay at home kind of weird place that we're in where we can't leave our apartments or our houses or whatever, what would be your recommended literature or film? Yeah.
Film to watch. Okay, actually, 1 second. I have to look it up real quick.
It's all good. So we have technology, so we can do this.
Exactly. It's gorgeous. Okay, so I just recently watched this one film that I thought was really interesting. Let me make sure it's the right one. Yes, it is. Great. It was on Netflix. It's called The Platform. It is a Spanish horror film, sci-fi horror film, and basically the premise is that prisoners are in a tall tower that is a certain number of floors high, and people and a platform descends on this prison, slowly going down all the way to the end. And the catch is that they fill the platform with amazing food at the very top, food that everybody could possibly want. But it stops at each floor, and at each floor, people get to eat their fill. The catch, of course, is as the platform continues to go down, there's less and less food. And depending on how greedy people are at the top, people at the bottom get nothing. So it's a super heavy-handed metaphor on capitalism.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it a lot. People may have different feelings on the endings, but I enjoyed it a lot, and I thought it was a really kind of very interesting film on what we're experiencing now in a lot of ways. So I would suggest watching that. I think it'll certainly be different and interesting. It's really cool to see these Spanish horror actors like kill it. Like, you can tell star power no matter what language, because there are certain actors in there that you're like, oh, you're a big deal, aren't you? Because you're really good. But yeah, I think it's a really excellent film to watch. I enjoy that one.
That's awesome. That's a great suggestion. How interesting. What an interesting concept.
Yeah.
So this is a question that I ask everybody, and I don't send it to you beforehand because I want you to give me your honest kind of like gut reaction. But I ask everybody that if you could broadcast 1 or 2 sentences, if you need the extra sentence, if you could broadcast 1 or 2 sentences to the whole world and everyone would really understand it, really soak it in, really let it kind of take root in their lives, what would that message be that you would want to get across?
Black Lives Matter.
Love it.
Honestly, yeah, I think that's the main one that we need to get across. And / wear a mask.
Yep.
Those are the 2 main ones. I think most other things anybody has to say is kind of superseded by those. So, yeah.
I love it. I think that's great. I mean, that's really kind of, that encompasses kind of the state of our world right now and the needs we have. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Is it okay if I do a shameless plug?
Absolutely do a shameless plug.
Excellent. Tomorrow, Everything Will Be Fine opens at the Latino Cultural Center. It's a drive-in theater show. The actors' cars are used as lighting and set pieces and architecture. It's a crazy show. It's really fun. Kwame did the choreography for it and co-directed it with me. Zoe Kerr wrote it. Jonah did an amazing job with the lighting, and I produced it. But either way, it is going to be really cool. We're actually sold out this weekend, but we have another weekend, July 10th and 11th. And we're working on a deal where we probably will go on tour throughout the Dallas area, providing this service to any community, including underserved communities. So we're really super excited about that. I think we're going to Pleasant Grove next, so keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's super exciting.
Awesome. So the next weekend it'll be open will be which weekend?
July 10th and 11th. We're skipping July 11th, going straight to 10th and 11th.
Awesome. All right, so folks, buy your tickets for July 10th and 11th. Everything Will Be Fine. It's drive-in movie theater, kind of live theater thing. It's going to be really, really cool. So be sure to come out and support Prism Movement Theater. And Jeff, thank you so much for joining me today and for giving of yourself to art cultivation and for making incredible things happen for artists in the city of Dallas.
I can't wait to see Art Cult happen again. I'm very excited.
We'll be praying.